gentlemen, we are live. It is Monday, February 7th, 2022. Thank you all so much for joining us for the Voice of Reason podcast. My name is Sean Phillips, and as always, I am joined alongside my not one but two co-hosts, Mr. Andy Van Beber and Travis Kirkendall. Gentlemen, how are we doing on this lovely Monday evening?
Well, I can say we're digging out now. I mean, hey, we're no longer in the. I don't know how much snow you guys got, but I was. I
A
am.
lot, a lot.
Did you guys
Yeah,
get?
we had quite a bit here, but it's pretty much cleared up now as far as the roads go.
Yeah, well, we're still learning on how to try to plow snow down in northeast Missouri. So
Yeah, it never
I heard it
ceases
was
to
bad.
amaze
My
me.
dad didn't even go to work until Friday.
yeah, yeah, we were out. We were out Tuesday. Excuse me, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and we were. Um, it was not. I will say this. I did get quite a. I did something I haven't done in a while. Worked on a book, and I'm reading, and I'm almost through with it, and it is quite the interesting book. So
What are you reading?
it is by a gentleman who was he's still the lead guitarist for Korn. It was called Eyes with My Eyes Wide Open. Brian Welch, and
Hmm.
it tells the story of his leaving Korn after he converted to Christianity. He left Korn, and it talked about him struggling with all of his demons, from addiction to just raising his daughter. And then, he kind of, he paints the picture of, this guy he got involved with as far as he said he was a Christian businessman. The guy ended up stealing millions of dollars from Brian Welch, and then how he came out of that. It's a really good
Well,
book. So, I mean, I'm not a Corn fan by any shape of the imagination, but I'm intrigued by people who, high profile people who make conversions to Christianity, and now he's taught the whole crux of the book is getting back to where he joined. He's going to rejoin Corn in this book, and of course he is in Corn now, back with Corn now. And he's talking about how he's using that as a way to reach people for God. So I thought it's a really good book.
yeah, that actually does sound pretty
Sounds
interesting.
interesting. Let's check it out.
I am with you on the. I don't typically listen to too much Corn. However, I know who they are, and I have heard a handful of their songs. So definitely, yeah. I mean, for that genre, for that group of music, that's actually kind of interesting to kind of hear that side of thing. Travis, how about you? How are things going in Chicagoland for you right now?
Everything's great. Like I just got done telling you guys. Hopefully next time we do the show, it'll be from the new place. So fingers crossed the weather stays good for us and there's no issues.
From the
Actually
studio.
had the day off today, which was pretty nice. Took care of just moving stuff, and just me and her caught up on stuff we needed to. So it's
Yeah, you
good.
guys went to a pretty cool little coffee shop or something. It looked like today too.
Yeah, it was really cool. It's called 2D Restaurant, and like the whole layout is like it's 2D. Like everything's like the artwork, everything's black and white. Like I don't really know how to explain it
Cool.
other than if you're listening, Google search 2D Restaurant in Chicago. Don't know why it's called restaurant because it's just a little coffee shop, but it's pretty cool. She saw it on like some like travel page for Chicago or whatnot, and we went and checked it out. It was pretty cool.
I do want to put a side note on there too for all of our listeners. If you follow us on Facebook, you will see that we have created a new side group. It is called the Voice of Reason Weekly Poll Group, and this is a way. I just created this yesterday, and from time to time, well, every week we'll try to have a poll in some kind of regards to what we're talking about, and we also put a poll on Twitter this week, and I'm actually just reading the results of our poll so far. But if you listen to us on Voice of Reason podcast, please go to the Facebook page, like that, and then go over to the group tab, click on that, and then the Voice of Reason then you just join our little poll page. So that's just another little facet that you can get involved with here on the podcast.
Yeah, it's definitely as we kind of continue to shape things up and get things a little bit more um, moving and rolling along with the podcast. We're going to have a lot more interaction, kind of off of the show necessarily. I know that for some of our listeners, if you guys like listen on Spotify and you don't necessarily listen to us live on Facebook, you guys aren't necessarily able to comment and get involved necessarily during the show. Um,
Get
However,
involved, yeah.
yeah, you guys can get involved this way by going through the polls, and then we kind of discuss those things. I do believe they're also going to be on Twitter as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, yeah. It's we're for some odd reason our broadcast software doesn't. It's not a, we. It's kind of janky on getting us on Twitter, but just on that note to add, we do now have also a Twitch channel. We have Voice of Reason Podcast 2021 on Twitch. I was kind of researching other places where we could put up podcast, and Twitch actually has a large number of podcasts on their channel. I thought it was always just for gaming and sports, but it also has podcasts. So we are now available on Twitch at Voice of Reason Podcast 2021. So add that to your list, and hopefully that's also another way that we can um, get our stuff out there.
And one thing I can say, and this goes for like I'm doing it right now currently, and so you guys, if Travis and Andy, if you guys have your phones available off to the side, but I learned a kind of a Twitch hack. Um, so if you guys are listening, and whether or not you're with listening to us currently like live, or if you guys do listen to us on Spotify, whenever it is that you guys listen, if it's listening to us later, if on Mondays, 9 p.m. is typically the go time that we typically go live for our shows. And if you follow the Facebook page, we're pretty good about addressing, hey, might be another day of the week. I will kind of throw this in real quick. Next week, we will be live February 15th, that Tuesday, just so we can
Yep.
have Valentine's Day for the ladies so we don't get stabbed in our sleep.
Right.
However,
Yes.
if, and this is again, I completely understand if you guys listen to us, whether it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever it is, we are super appreciative. What you can do to help us is if you guys are still awake and you don't typically listen to us on Facebook at 9 o'clock live, if you could go to Twitch, and if you guys could just click our link and then let it play, even if it's in the background, like if you have an extra computer or or a phone, wherever it is, if you guys do that for us, right, as we get more views, essentially Twitch kind of has like whoever has the most live viewers at the time, they're at the very top. And then whoever's next is kind of below them, and then below them, and then below them, below them. So many people get buried in the middle with zero viewers. But if you start to even get like 4 or 5 live at a time, you pop up in like the top page on Twitch. And
Mhm.
so that's how you can generate a lot more listeners and viewers. So if you guys have the option, I'm just going to throw that out there before we get into today's discussion, since we are going to be live on Twitch. Typically, if you guys could at least just follow the page and then put us on in the background or something like that, even if you want to
Yes.
save the actual listening for your Monday or your Tuesday morning drive, whatever, it'd be greatly appreciated. So, um, but yeah, we've definitely got quite the discussion to kind of get into today. I know things have kind of been
We've been full for the last two
crazy
weeks. Yeah, I know.
crazy
We've been full.
to say the least with what is happening in the world. And for us as new podcasters, I definitely think we by not doing, we have learned a lot by listening and watching, just kind of what has happened in a whirlwind of different things, um, in the public eye for entertainers, for podcasters, for talk show hosts in general. So where do we want to start, guys?
Well,
How do we? Is
I'll
there a
start.
timeline
I'll
to
start out by
follow on?
asking this: what is, and don't think too hard because for me it's really easy. But what do you consider to be the dumbest thing that you have said that you wish you could have phrased differently or taken back, or what do you guys consider the dumbest thing you've ever said in your life? I'll start. So as a teacher, and I have stuck my foot in my mouth many a times, but I have said I've made various, how should I say, politically incorrect comments, or I have said something to a student and I've flown off the handle, and I get an email from my boss, or I get a letter from, or an email from my parents, or a phone call, and I automatically regret what I said. But yet there's other times that I've made a statement that to others sounds stupid, and I've stood by it, and I've been burned by it, but I stick by certain things. I'll hold my ground to. So, what do you guys consider to be the dumbest thing, or the silliest thing, or just something that just slipped out and you wish you could have took back?
Oh, jeez.
Sean's going through his memory.
I know I
bank
could
right
probably. There's got to be better things than this. I just the first thing I thought of. I remember back in high school, I called a girl fat to her face and got slapped in the face for it. That was pretty stupid. But I've said a lot of stupid things. I can't really think of. I don't know. I'll try to think of a good one. Sean, what do you got?
Probably anything and everything.
That's how
I mean,
feel.
it just stems from like so much, like, you know, when I think, when I'm younger and I really didn't understand the power of words, and um, I didn't understand other people and what it could have been, and just little things, and whether they were like, as a kid, for example, just use this as an example, like saying something's gay or going on, or
Yeah,
that's
they're
retarded,
perfect.
things like those,
Perfect.
just those kind of things, because again, it's one of those things that you kind of go on and you learn, it just kind of resonates on, like, okay, how does it really affect those that you don't really, know. And again, I always think there's a time and place for everything. Like, again, as someone that has done stand up and someone that appreciates stand up, I am a firm believer that, and Daniel Tosh has a bit that he kind of hits the nail on the head, where he's like, anything can be funny if you can write a good joke about it. And I'm not saying that to, like, for comedy's sake. I'm just saying, like, I have seen, for doing open mics, I have seen people say stupid things on stage, try to make jokes, and they don't hit, and they're terrible jokes, ones that you might say are offensive. And I have seen individuals try to use words or phrases, and they're open, and they just they don't hit. I've heard other people use those same words, same phrases, and the joke hits. So, um, yeah, probably something like that. Just being young and dumb, and not really truly understanding what the words meant, who they hurt, and that kind of thing.
So I'm gonna repeat a statement that I've said many times in my history class, and I want to see which if you guys agree with it. And I'm sure you probably will, but I'm gonna say it anyway, just for the record. The First Amendment, freedom of speech, not only protects the speech you like and agree with, but it also protects the speech that you hate and disagree with.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes. So when someone makes a statement, and this is the angle that I want to go with tonight. We have three statements that we're going to talk about separately, and maybe one more than the other or anything else. But for those of you who followed I believe it happened last Wednesday on The View, uh, um, Whoopi Goldberg made a statement that was not in the best interest. I'm going to play this clip real quick, and let's hear what I'll play it, and then we'll come back to you guys.
The Holocaust isn't about race.
No.
No, it's not about
maybe
race.
ethnicity.
Well, they
No,
consider
it's
Jews
about
a different race.
But it's not about race. It's not about
Well,
race.
what is it about?
Because it's about man's inhumanity to man. That's what it's about.
But it's about white supremacy. It's
Well,
about
but
going
it's not-
after
it's
Jews
not about
and
ideal race.
gypsies
It's
and
But these are two
Romans.
white groups of people.
Well, they
How
would
do we
have to black
They
people
didn't see
too.
them as white.
And they would
But
have
you're
to
missing the
homosexuals.
point. You're
Yeah.
missing the point.
Yeah.
The minute you turn it into race, it goes down this alley. Let's talk about it for what it is. It's how people treat each other. It's a problem. It doesn't matter if you're black or white, because black, white, Jews, everybody eats each other. So is it, if you're uncomfortable, if you hear about Mouse, should you be worried? Should
So what comes of that is, so what, and just to say, Whoopi was suspended. She's been suspended from
The View for 2 weeks.
The
I
View
believe.
for 2 weeks, and the president of ABC issued an apology statement, basically apologizing to all the probably hundreds, if not thousands, of Jewish employees that work for ABC, and she is, and the problem I had, and this is, I don't support this statement whatsoever. I'll just go out on a limb and say that first. I do not support that statement whatsoever. But when she said that statement, the president of ABC then issues the following statement and says, "Well, I'm going to ask her for time to reflect upon the statement she made." Okay, so when we come to this woman is 65 years old. I looked up her age. She's 65 years old. And she is, controversial. She was back in the 80s, great comedian, loved her stand up. Whenever they did their comic relief every year, her, Robin Williams, and Billy Crystal did it. I always try to catch a little bit of it when it was on HBO. Always great stuff. But first of all, do you guys, first of all, I'm going to play devil's advocate. What do you think about her statement? Let's just say it. What do you think about that statement?
I think she was speaking on something that, how do I word it? It was there was like no intelligence, and that's how bad I think that statement was. I feel like she did not think about what she was saying in the moment. Like, I don't think she really thought about what she was saying when she made that statement. Like, we started this conversation with, have we said things in the past that, we regret and wondered why the hell did we say that? I would like to hope that when she made that comment, she was in her head like, why the fuck did I say that? Or what am I trying to, I don't know. If Sean, it was such a bad statement. I don't know how to justify anything she was trying to say, because it doesn't make any sense to me. What I heard was, well, it's white on white.
That's exactly what I heard.
And that's not the point. Like, they were being killed because they were Jewish.
Sean, what do you think?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, it's one of the most idiotic statements I've ever heard. And again, I think it just comes from a place of being uneducated and not having knowledge of that situation. I'm not saying that Whoopi Goldberg is stupid. I'm not saying that she's uneducated. I'm saying that when it came to this specific thing that she wanted to talk about, she was incredibly wrong. First and foremost, what was it that Hitler wanted? The Aryan race. The Aryan race. Okay. Yes. And a big thing, and I was having this conversation earlier on this week, is when this came out, because we as a society have changed. Even from the early 1900s, things have changed. Okay. If we go back, right, I'm going to use, because I'm Irish, I'm going to use the Irish people as an example.
Mm-hmm.
When was it 400 BC, when we migrated to Ireland, and we fast forward throughout history, right? And you always hear how there was this the British rule over Ireland throughout history. And we look at like when people like when you hear the argument about like the people that are Irish hate people that are British, okay, and the Brits hate the Irish. Well, it doesn't stem because they hated them because they were Irish. Now that had nothing to do with it. If you really want to get down to the bare the 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 meat potatoes of it, it mostly came to religion. But the thing is, back then, right? If we'll fast forward to like the 1900s. If you looked at it, if, they weren't necessarily the rivalry, the anger. Okay, it didn't stem from like we just hate them because they're not Catholic. We hate them because they're not turning into Protestants. This is why we're so mad. It stemmed down to they were like they're Irish and we don't like them. Okay, even though they were white, they were looked as a different race. Okay, and you can fast forward, and that's exactly how it was with the Jewish people.
It's eugenics.
It's the same thing when like when when like if someone makes like a joke about an Italian or like would it be considered offensive as me with Irish heritage being born in America if I was to go around talking like an Italian guy in the wave of my hands, why is that not always brought up? Okay, because is that not offensive? Is that a non-issue because Italians typically look more like me? Now racism is clearly an issue, okay? And it is reasons like the statement that Whoopi Goldberg made about how the Holocaust was a white on white issue.
White on white crime issue, yes.
Is it goes to show how race is so much more than just a black or a white issue. And I think that's where it's being forgotten. Because like if we want to go like back in time, if we just want to talk about like oppression, oppression is has been God. It just depended on when you showed up to one certain place at a certain time throughout history, and unfortunately, right now we are at a part of time where oppression in America, okay, is typically found in individuals that have dark skin. That is where oppression in America is right now. That doesn't mean that that has always been how oppression has worked throughout history. Race is not just a black and white issue.
No, it isn't.
There's so much more to it because you could go anywhere else in the world and it could be different. And so that's where my issue is just like she's wrong because of what she sees oppression here. That's how she sees it. But if look at I mean look at how it is like people in Israel and Palestine, okay, like to them
Oh,
it's not just religion, it's race.
it is race.
it's
Yeah.
it's Israelis and Palestinians, and that's who's fighting. It's a race issue. It's so like even I'll never forget like when I was a freshman in college, I met I was buddies with a guy. I had met a guy who was in my class. He was from Nepal, and he absolutely hated people from India. And he had all kinds of like he would just see like it was so wild. Like he would just throw random stuff out like where I don't even know what the words were, but I was like, what does that even mean? He's like, it's because he's from India. And I was like, isn't Nepal kind of close to India? And he's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, I'm so confused here. And he's like, but it's there's so much more. Like it's not just a black and white issue. And I just think that's where it was missed. I think it was just a matter of trying to compare. Here's what we see, around here and in other parts of the world where it's like mainstream versus there's such a deeper underlying issue, I think.
Okay, so let me take it a step further. All right. And this is to stir the pot on purpose. Okay. First of all, you know, I have problems when they call the show The View. That's what it was on, The View. Instead of saying a view. You know, stuff that is put out on this show and and they had, I mean, what this year I think marks 25 years for The View. And they are, they have a large viewer base, conservative, you know, all of these different conservative, radical, left. And they have everybody on that channel. But saying the president of the ABC saying, "Okay, now you need to take 2 weeks off and think about what you said." I mean, to me that's like saying something I would say to my 11-year-old. Why did you say that? Well, I said it because it was my view, and therefore, okay. But if I said that to my 11-year-old, to me, that's the most ignorant thing for me to say is like, why did you say that? You need to think about what you said. Okay, I'm thinking. Okay, Whoopi at the end of the day, and of course they twisted her arm, and they forced her, and she gave her the next day she gave her apology, which began her, and that was the beginning of her. Okay, so now in the name of free speech, now I do not agree with that comment, but, and this is a heavy but, why why should she be should that be condemned, or should it just say, okay, well, that's just your view? I mean, you get what I'm saying? I mean, I think sometimes we expect everything to be in this nice, with free speech. We're expecting something to be in this nice, neat little box. That if there's something that comes out of that we don't like, and that goes back to our episode. Shoot, back probably episode 10 or 15, at episode 10 or 15, when we did the cancel culture episode. You know,
Well, isn't it kind of weird? Like the only so, and look, I'm one of those individuals where if I don't think that, again, it all boils down to, hey, what does the network want? If the network thinks, wow, that's terrible, you got to go, then you got to go. I mean, you understand, like, that happens sometimes, like, in any job. If you were to say something on accident, or just say something, maybe you didn't mean it at the time, or it just, you got mad, or say you're bartending and you yell at a customer, right? That's the kind of outburst that you have. All of a sudden you're fired. Like, those kind of things just happen all the time in any job. Did you say, I can't remember, is the View an ABC or an NBC?
it's ABC. It's ABC.
Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, and I might be mistaken, but I'm fairly certain that the gal, she was the actress in The Mandalorian,
Yes.
was fired
Yes.
Yes.
for, was it anti-Semitic comments that, or,
Let
or
me.
a
I'll.
post that, no, she compared, I remember exactly what it was now. On her Instagram, she posted a story that was comparing wearing a mask and, like, the starting of vaccine mandates, comparing it to Nazi Germany. And that got her fired from Disney. Disney owning ABC, or so it's weird now that
Yes.
you have another individual that is came out with a pretty negative stance on the Holocaust, and but maybe, I just, it's one of those things where there's never gonna be a standard, like, if you say this, you're axed, like, it's always just gonna come down to, hey, I love the term, you hear it in, oh gosh, and now I'm gonna forget it. It's be who you can afford to be. You know, like, if you are of a importance person and the company knows that, then they're gonna go out on a limb, and they're gonna take the backlash. But if they think they can still profit off your name afterwards, they're gonna keep riding with it. There's a lot of people probably that really like Whoopi Goldberg on The View,
Well, let me read.
and
Let me read. So this was
yeah, go ahead.
Gina. This was Gina Carano's response, or this was this. So this was last year, correct, Sean? This was when this went
Yeah,
down.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so her Instagram post read: Jews were beaten in the streets, not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children. Because history is edited, most people don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views? that's not apples to oranges. That's apples to apples.
Hmm.
That's apple. And I could see, because we are ramping up, and again, what our podcast is about having open discussion and saying, all right, here's my statement. How do you feel about it? And instead of saying, "Oh, I don't agree with it, and here's why," we get extremely butthurt, and so, oh my gosh, we need to censor what you say. And we're going to get to this in another statement here. We're going to compare a like statement here in a second, and then we'll get to another one. That's when I asked this on our survey group this week. The question was asked, "What what do you feel?" Let me get the exact wordage that I put to this, so I don't mess up my own quote. But the thing that I said, where was it? How do you respond to speech that isn't in line with your views? And we only have 6 people who were on our group now, but all of the votes went to, I believe in free speech as long as it doesn't bring harm to anyone. So my question is this, and again, devil's advocate: is Whoopi Goldberg's comment bringing harm to anyone?
Physically, no. So it depends on your definition of harm.
Okay.
Right. Depends on who. It depends on who you ask.
All right. So
Hurt feelings.
Let's go ahead and draw that line then. What's the line then? Go ahead, Travis.
I would say, if if you're not physically hurting, because you can't physically hurt somebody with words, I guess, right? So I don't know. It is a hard line to draw, because the First Amendment, it can go both ways, like you said, and it's like, well, do we cancel Whoopi Goldberg for saying a stupid comment? And it's like, well, I mean, you made a good point earlier. You are technically in your right to say whatever the hell you want. I think it's where we as a society draw the line is, do we morally agree with this or not? And if we morally agree with it, cool, say whatever you want. And if we don't, we have a problem with it. But our First Amendment also gives freedom of speech. So it's like this, and to go off what Sean was saying earlier, I think Whoopi's had such a weird name. I think her comment on the, her Holocaust comment was way different than the actress's use of comparing masks to Nazi Germany. I think I don't understand why that was.
Well, and I believe that what Gina's comment dealt with saying, I think she was trying to bring awareness to this very thing. When you make a statement that goes counter to what somebody else believes, what is your level of anger going to be? We are trying to align every bit of speech to be absolutely non-threatening, non-hurt feelings. And Sean, I want to go back. When you talk about stand-up comics, now I've been to your show, and if an outside stranger came into Sean, and the reason why I love Sean as a comic is because he doesn't. When it comes to a comic, you knew how to read the room, and you were feeding off of the energy, and you said stuff that was even more and more and more and more it was shocking, but it was that level of humor. And I don't even think it's about knowing your audience either in this case, because Whoopi was saying, here's what I think. And we don't know things from her view, because she is a black woman living in America who grew up in a time probably she's 65 years old, so she definitely went through segregationist times as a child. She saw that. And I think what she was doing there is she's comparing her basis of her understanding of what racism is, and obviously it's going to have her own bias slant to it because she lived through it.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, which is like exactly why,
That's a good point.
I'm not saying like I because I think she's wrong. I want to make it very clear. I
Yes,
think she's
yes.
very
Oh, I do
wrong.
too. Yeah.
But I don't think that it was out of like a place of like, being angry or trying to say like, it was, it's just like, again, she wouldn't understand because maybe she's never had that conversation. Like if she's never had that conversation with, a woman or a man who was a child that went through the Holocaust, and ask any of them if they thought it was a race issue. And I can pretty much guarantee you they'll tell you it was 100% a race issue. And so yeah, I just think it's a comparison of experiences, and that's always just you can't do it. Like
Um,
everyone's different, and it's easy to want to walk a mile in someone's shoes, but unfortunately, like we're not all Cinderella. Like
right,
they
right.
don't always fit. So
Well, let me go. So, and this is the last thing I want to say about Whoopi, and I want to get into another speech that was made. Um, so I remember you guys were probably middle school, maybe even elementary school. Michael Vick was still playing football. Michael Vick
mhm.
was the quarterback for Atlanta
Falcons at
Falcons,
the time.
and then was it Phil? Did he come back and play
Then he
for
went to Philadelphia. Yep.
Philadelphia? So, and she caught. I remember. I still remember this because I am a football fan. I remember when Michael Vick was arrested, and he was and he was put on trial and all that stuff, and they found him guilty and everything else like that. But at that time, Whoopi said, "Look, I don't condone dogfighting, but let's look at the background where this guy came from. He is a black African American from the South, where dogs are viewed as sport, and that was part of it. And she didn't really defend him, but she could see where he was coming from. And she caught
Mhm.
a lot of flack for, oh, I mean, PETA was just like, oh my God, can you say that? But
Twitter wasn't around back then,
no,
so
yeah. And if Twitter would have been around back then, they would have drug her name through the mud again. But again, your level of speech is what is should be monitored to the point to where it's not. And I'm going to use a word that has been coming out a lot about this next speech, incendiary. That can create. If your speech is meant to create a problem, then you know you have to watch out. So I want to move forward then with this, and unless you guys had anything further you want to say about Whoopi.
no, I was just gonna say, just whenever we get to the next speech, don't make sure you don't use the word that is the reason why we're having such a
Well,
conversation this evening.
there is so much to this speech, and what I'm going to play. I'll play a few minutes of this clip. This was 2 weeks ago. This was a week ago Saturday in Conroe, Texas. And this was a humongous crowd that Donald Trump, he has these what are called the Save America rallies. And the Save America rally is basically just him starting on the campaign tour or campaign trail 3 years too early. And so I'll play this clip. And again, I'll play a little bit of it and then we'll come back to it. But I have to turn my mic off so everybody can hear it. So just bear with us for a second.
Prosecutors are vicious, horrible people. They're racists and they're very sick. They're mentally sick. They're going after me without any protection of my rights by the Supreme Court or most other courts. In reality, they're not after me, they're after you. And I just happen to be the person that's in the way. That's what they're after. It's been going on for years. And you want to hear one just to get off the subject, but you want to hear one, I just said, I got to put this down because it's so crazy. So just listen to this to top it all off about how crooked the DA's office in New York is. They couldn't get anything on me after years. So Hillary Clinton's law firm, Paul Weiss, Rifkin, Wharton and Garrison, a big and powerfully connected Democrat firm in New York, run by, listen to this one, Chuck Schumer's brother, sent one of their biggest partners, Mark Pomerantz, partner of the firm, who took a leave of absence from the law firm, and two of their best younger lawyers to the district attorney's office to work there full-time for free. How the hell do you like that? I got Hillary Clinton's law firm trying to prosecute me. This is the most corrupt system. So I've got the firm. Than that. Just last week in Virginia, one of these unscreened refugees was convicted of molesting a... And everyone knows it. You know who knows it more than anyone else? The Democrats. Just yesterday, we had a giant victory in the great state of Pennsylvania. A statewide court ruled that the practice of no excuse mail-in ballots put in place by Democrats right before the stolen election is illegal.
It's not exactly where I wanted, but he made another comment about, and you guys go ahead and talk for a little bit, but just give a little background about this speech, Sean, while I look for this clip real quick.
Yeah, so if I'm not mistaken, this is the one where he's trying to give himself or give the insurrection rioters their pardon, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah. So again, I think it just kind of I think of the meme from Futurama of the old man yelling at a cloud kind of thing. Really, like you said, we're getting to the point now where when it comes time for primaries and when we start to get to election season again, it's going to be interesting, and we're going to see a lot more of this kind of stuff on our televisions day in, day out. We've kind of been, free from it for a little bit, but I mean, just right off the bat, he's continuing to fuel that fire. That was started all the way back in 2014 when he was being elected, and Hillary Clinton and her emails and all that good stuff was the front running thing on the hot press to work against her. And here you have her crowd chanting, lock her up. And so it's interesting. But again, like we're talking about and what we've been talking about, this is kind of where danger starts. And where things start to get messy. Travis, what do you think?
Yeah, it goes back to, we go back to is what the person's saying going to cause harm? And you look at his comments, and you said it's fuel to the fire. You're trying to get people angry. You're trying to get people fired up. You're trying to get people to resist and to go out to the streets and, the protest, do whatever. And again, free speech. Is he allowed to go on stage and just say a bunch of crazy shit to get people hyped up and do stuff? Or do we say, no, you can't do that. You're not allowed to say that on stage. Okay, then is that free speech? It's a really, I want to defend free speech so much. Part of me wants to say, you know what, let Trump go on stage and say whatever he wants. Because my biggest fear is that say we start to limit free speech to stuff like that. My fear is that if we begin to limit the outrageous things people say, we slowly start taking away more things and more things. Like, I think it's a real slippery slope when we start to do that. So again, it's such a hard question to answer if you really actually think about it. And look what happened with Rogan, which I don't know if we're going to get to that today too, but I mean, like, people are trying to take him down for the stuff he's saying. And it's like, I don't know where you draw the line. I really don't. I mean, we talked about, if it's going to physically harm people, you should, it probably shouldn't be said. But then again, the question is, all right, are we limiting free speech? I don't know. I hate the idea of limiting speech, like I said. So
Right,
I don't know
we'll
what you.
probably get into the Rogan situation because that's a whole different can of worms to dig into probably at a later date if we run out of time tonight. But the big thing is like, you know, free speech. It's again, it's funny because there's such a gray area because like I'm trying to think like when we go on the well, what will it cause harm or can it cause harm? Well, look at Hitler and what he was able to do with
That's a
quote
good
unquote
point. Yep.
free speech. But then in the same token, it's just like, look what Martin Luther King was able to do with free speech. And look what he was able to accomplish. So, and again, when people are like, okay, well then, limit what, Hitler's saying and don't limit, what Martin Luther King is saying. It's like, okay, but you have to understand there are people out there, okay? And unfortunately, these people are people that work in politics. There are people that work in politics that might have agreed with some of the stuff that Hitler said and disagreed with some of the stuff that Martin Luther King said. Okay. These people in politics, these people are in politics are the ones that make the laws. And then all of a sudden, if, yeah, you have a House represented, right? And then now all of a sudden it gets passed because there's more people that disagreed with what Martin Luther King Jr. said. And now all of a sudden, that's the kind of speech that gets silenced. And here's the thing: we act like that's not going to happen, but just we're so far advanced. And look at some of the nonsense that still happens every day
Well,
in
and the
the
point
House
that
of Reps, in the Senate.
right, and the point I wanted to bring up, and I'm still trying to find this clip, but what Donald Trump said was what he really rallied people was based upon the Atlanta DA, that is I forgot what county that is, Fulton County, Georgia. The DA is asking because what Trump wanted to do was he wanted to send the NSA down to Atlanta. He wanted to go to Georgia to seize all of the ballot boxes the night after the election because he felt there was fraud going down there. And so the Atlanta DA then goes to the point of saying, "Okay, well, I'm going to open up." She wanted to open up a case to say, and this woman's name is Fannie Willis, who is the top prosecutor here, and she basically she is investigating Trump for possible criminal interference in Georgia's 2020 presidential election contest. And she wrote a letter to the FBI last Sunday, a week ago yesterday, and she has serious security concerns that were escalated this weekend by the rhetoric of Donald Trump. And he said, what he had said was, if they indict me, then I want to push for the biggest we're going to see the biggest protests in Atlanta and in Houston and in DC. That kind of speech is where there's your fine line right there, gentlemen.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine line. When I start saying, okay, we're going to raise some hell, kick some ass, and take some names, that's the point. I go back to the young man Michael Brown. Michael Brown, when the grand jury did not find enough evidence to try the police officer, black people were outside the police station. They had the right to be there. They had the right to be in that place and to protest. And they were doing it relatively peacefully until Michael Brown's, parents got up on top of a cop car and they gave him a megaphone and they started talking. And I watched this unfold. This is when Briley was in the hospital. We were glued to the TV because we couldn't leave the hospital. Hospital was under lockdown. And Michael Brown's mother said a short, thank you for your support. We're going to fight this, and we're going to, and then Michael Brown's dad gets up on the car, and pardon my French, and when I say, but to quote him directly, because it still rings true in my ear, he said, "Let's go out and burn this motherfucker to the ground." I don't know if you guys remember that or not, but I
Mhm.
remember
Yeah, I remember.
distinctly sitting there, and I looked over at my wife, and I mean, they didn't even catch it on live TV. Fox 2 or whoever we were watching was
Mhm.
carrying it. They didn't even catch it live. They couldn't bleep it out fast enough. And I just thought, there goes the neighborhood. Literally, there goes the neighborhood. When
Yeah.
you make a statement like that, you have the right to assemble. You have the right to, my father always said, my rights, your rights end where my nose begins. Once you get into my space and you start something, well, they're not, and I don't buy this argument of, well, they don't listen any other way. We're tired of being beat. That's where our system is failing. Donald Trump cannot get over this fact that, and again, I know we have a lot of Trump followers who watch our page. I'm waiting. I'm surprised that I haven't seen any comments come up yet. But,
That he took a fat ass L.
well, yeah. And so he loses by, I want to look at this. He loses by 7 million votes. Okay. The FBI looked into the election. Each each of the 50 states had their, which is part of their job, their Secretary of State, a number of which were Republican, verify the results. And part of that verification is to look back over, and if anybody, and Donald Trump did it in a number of states. He did it in Pennsylvania, he did it in Georgia, he did it in Ohio, he did it in North Carolina. And he said, I want you to look into this because before you certify this, please look into this. And each one of these Republican led state houses, state secretaries of states, okay, we're going to look at this. And they could not find any irregularities. And then he asked for independent investigators to look at it, and they still couldn't find anything. I think the only thing they found was maybe a few hundred in Michigan, where they had a few hundred, where he got blown out, by the way, but they had a few hundred. They did find there were some people who were dead who were registered and who did vote on that day. But to say that there was a fraud of 7 million people, and he would go on, and then Trump would go on to say, if I get back in, I'm going to pardon. I would think about pardoning those people who were the insurrectionists on the day on January the 6th. Okay, so now what are you doing? When they use the word, they rightly so use the word incendiary, because what you are doing, instead of trying to bring the country together, you're going to use your speech, your right of free speech, to drive a wedge further down. And when you make a statement like, we're going to see, I can guarantee you, if that district attorney in Atlanta brings those charges, there will be riots in Atlanta. I hate to say this, but I will guarantee it. Mark your calendar, January or February the 7th, 2022, you're going to see riots if that occurs. And he made that statement to cover his own ass, and I don't think that's right.
Yeah, I mean, again, free speech, especially when it comes to who who can it affect? When is it time to draw the line? Because again, like when you look at Trump, he's just a modern day Jim Jones at this
Yes,
point. Like that's where he's getting to.
he.
Is he's a modern day Jim Jones,
How
and
many? Yeah,
people
how many
are
people are going to
drinking
drink the
up the
Kool Aid?
Kool-Aid.
Yes.
Yeah, that are in there. It's just we've we're so deeply in thrusted into conspiracy theory, and the as much as there is cancel culture, there is the anti-cancel culture who are like trying to create this, give this platform to an individual who clearly at this point, if again with those words, like that's incriminating. Like that is like But again, it's weird. Like, we laugh about it, but like, there's a great movie out there, one of the best I've ever seen, actually. It's called Bruno, with
Yes.
Sacha Baron Cohen in it.
Yep.
And at the end of the movie, he does this. He has this event where it's part of the film, where he's throwing a mixed martial arts amateur night, right, at this Coliseum somewhere. I want to say it's Georgia.
It was in Georgia. Yes.
And at
Yes,
it was called like Straight Dave's like
Yes.
slamming.
Yes.
Yeah. And so at the end of this movie, he and this other character start making out live in front of this crowd in Georgia.
Yep.
And they lost their minds.
ballistic.
And he was charged for inciting a riot. And so you see it with like rappers. I'm pretty sure like Tyler, the Creator, isn't allowed in like several countries, because back in his earlier days, he had incited quote unquote riots when he was like, "Hey, fans, rush the stage and do this." Yeah. So if those individuals can get charged for things like that, then why can't this individual who goes out and says, if they book me, if they press charges, if they file charges, if they come after me, you go right back after at them? I mean, that is huge. That is it'll be interesting. That's to say the least, because then the issue is going to be, come Atlanta, we're going to get 8 more different examples of Kyle Rittenhouse all over again.
And I was just listening to.
Yeah.
I was just listening to.
And I would like to add.
We begin.
Go ahead,
What
Travis.
did you say?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just wanting to say, to kind of maybe end the whole Trump thing. I don't know. I would want to say, if Trump was such a great leader, if he was this great president that we had, and we're in such a delicate time in America right now, because there's like such a highlight on these extreme things that people are saying that's creating divide. You have the left, the right, Democrat, Republican, whatever you want to label it as. If he was this great leader that some people claim he is, why is he going on stage and adding further fuel to the fire, creating a further divide, instead of doing what a leader should do, and it's unite people? I think that's where Trump really failed. Trump was not able to unite people, and that's where he failed as a leader. His comments were just so. It's like, to me, it was obvious when he made that comment, like, he is not a good leader. I'm sorry, I've never been a huge fan of him, but that was just like, that's not leadership in my eyes.
Well, let me just play this little tiny clip of him talking about the pardon. I did find that. Hold on 1 second.
If I run and if I win, we will treat those people from January 6th fairly. We will treat them fairly. And if it requires pardons, we will give them pardons, because they are being treated so unfairly.
So when you come and you make that statement, they were treated so unfairly, but yet you play back any of his stuff from the night that it happened, and how he condemned it and what all he said. You're making democracy out to be a mockery. Everything that the First Amendment stands for, you are treating it to democracy, because our founding fathers said, you have the right to your opinion. You have your right to your free speech. But when you look somewhere else, when you look into the 14th Amendment, okay, the 14th Amendment is your due process right. Okay, that doesn't just extend to your due process rights, don't just extend to the courts and to the government and to the laws. It extends to other people. It gives you right. The 14th Amendment first established rights for African American citizens. We have now expanded to say, because of your 14th Amendment right, you have the right to do whatever as long as it does not take away someone else's rights. And so people say, oh, well, that means the First and the 14th are in conflict with each other. No, it doesn't. It means you have the right to make that speech until, and here's the line, Travis, we talked about earlier, until you cross over that line and you say, all right, I'm going to give these guys pardons, and I'm going, because there is that large group of people who are out there, and it is a surprisingly large group of people who are out there who call those that 125 people who got into the Capitol building, call them patriots. That wasn't, and let's call it what it was. I'm sorry. That was an insurrection. That was a attempted coup to overthrow a democratically elected president, who I don't agree with. I think Joe is out of his gourd. But you know what? 7 million more people voted for that loon than did for the other loon. And you have to respect the rights of the people who cast that vote. Okay, well, just because I'm pissed off, I'm going to go and... No, that is not the way it works. And we're losing our mind over this. If it's that whole toddler mentality that if I don't get my way, I'm going to take my marbles when I go home, and don't you dare say anything that's going to make me even more upset. Because if you do, then I'm going to come back and kick you square in the balls. It doesn't work that way. The beauty of free press, the beauty of, and I hated the term fake news. I hated that term when Donald Trump came out with the term fake news. If you don't like the channel, change it. If you don't like the narrative, go someplace that supports your narrative and scream it from the mountaintop on that network. I'm sorry, that's just...
No, I was never quite a fan of it either. But again, it just created a divide, and not to defend some of the news networks, because to give President Trump the benefit of the doubt, there was definitely some news networks that were very much against him and attacked him in some questions. But go ahead, Sean.
Oh no, I didn't. I didn't have anything. I was still listening.
Well, let me just quote. We just had one of our viewers just a really good thing here, and he says, "Hate to say it, but the people at the top want division." I agree with that 100%. They all want us to be against each other. None of them want unity. It'll always be that way until we, the people, change it. But they put this mentality into people's head that we can't get away from it, and that's the danger of free speech. When you look at the people who were there, I mean, you had young, you had old, you had black. There were a number of people behind Trump. I think that were placed there. It said blacks for Trump, and that okay, and you have to, and I listen. I agree with those people. Now, those people, again, freedom to assemble. They have the right to be there. They have the right to state their views. They have the right to wear their MAGA hats. They have the right to say "Save America." But at some point, when you have to realize that speech is going to drive a deeper wedge that it could cause. And I don't want to say that this would happen. I pray to God that this would not happen. But that we will have this divide, and that we will, gentlemen, what you saw last year what you saw, I'll take that back. What you saw in 2016 was probably, and I hate to say this, but it's probably going to be the last peaceful transfer of power from one president to the next that we will ever see. And all because of speech. I mean, when I said, okay, Donald Trump, and I still say this, Donald Trump on January the 6th, he had the right to call a rally. He was well within his rights. He went to, when you look, he went to Washington, D.C. City Council, got a permit, which isn't hard to do, to have a meeting there at the ellipse there at Washington Monument. He had every right to have it there. they had whatever they said, they had 400,000 people there. And then he obtained police escorts to block. He said, for the intent to march up to the Capitol to protest. They're well within their rights to do all of that. But when you start and you stick your foot through that window and you walk through, that's where your rights end and somebody else's begins. And people split hairs. Well, what he said wasn't inside or right. Or yes, it did inside. We've talked about that comment that he made that day. But obviously, we can't get into the mind of Donald Trump. But if we did, only there would we know what was the intention of that statement. He chose his words carefully because he knew it would come back to bite him in the ass if he didn't. And he chose his words carefully. He said, hey, this is what I said. It's on record. You got it on tape. Here's what I said. But like you said, Sean, are you going to drink the Kool-Aid?
Yeah, what a time, and it will be interesting because if he is the Republican nomination, then, and if he loses again, then what? Then what's the next discourse of action? Are we just going to rinse, wash, and repeat and continue this over and over again? And then I truthfully think, because I remember I was here, there were protesters outside of the Capitol in Jeff City that day.
Yep.
And, they didn't that day, but the next election is that the day that they try to break into the Missouri State Capitol? Is that where capitals across the United States where it's going to start happening? It's just,
Andy, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So to go off what you just said about how you think that the 2016 election might have been the last peaceful transfer of power we had.
Yes.
Between presidents and parties.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we have what we had the last election and what we might see going forward, do you think that this is the beginning of the end of the American democracy?
Yes. Without hesitation, yes. American democracy works to meet majority rules and minority rights, okay? The majority rules, the minority still has their rights. But what was attempted, and we could go on a whole nother show of this, and I've told you guys about this show that I've watched. It's an HBO documentary. It's called, I think it's either 4 hours in the Capitol or 6 hours in the Capitol. And it talks about the beginning and the end. It has tons of phone footage from both sides. It interviewed people from both sides. It interviewed DC cops. It interviewed one of the Capitol Police guys was a guy who voted for Trump and he got severely injured. And he basically said, I lost all respect for the man. And he said, well, why were you guys so short-staffed for so long? And again, this is this cop saying this. He says, I believe, and he didn't have anything to substantiate this, but he knew enough. He said, I believe that Trump wanted the Capitol to be taken so he could declare martial law, so he could suspend the results of the election. That is abuse of power. That's a dangerous thing for that guy to say. But when I look at the peaceful, and I still remember the 2012. I can tell you where I was at the night of the 2012 election. Larry Logan and I we actually were called to speak at it was a intro to education class over at Mizzou, and we were talking about it. And at the time, Romney was winning until the big states came in, and then Obama won. And we both, and of course, Larry's an old history teacher before he became principal. And on our way back home, we just said, well, the people have spoken. It's, we're going to have another successful, democracy worked. That's that, and even with Trump, and even when Trump won, I was like, well, and Obama was so civil. They had them up there to the White House. They walked through the White House. They did their photo ops. They did, they hung out together and they did the political. You never saw that with the Bidens and the Trumps.
No.
And to me, when you cross, and this will be my last statement on this. When you cross a line that involves the Constitution and constitutional rights, whether you agree with it or not, whether you agree with somebody else's statement, whether you agree or not with some, once that line is crossed, there's no going back. And we've set ourselves up. Now, I can guarantee you they'll in 2024, to certify that election, I guarantee you the National Guard's going to have tanks surrounding that Capitol building. I guarantee you, Sean, if you're about ready to finish your stint out, but I guarantee you would have been called to Washington, D.C., and you would have been right there in that front line in 2024, because I'm afraid of that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I already know that we had plenty of National Guardsmen from Missouri that got sent to D.C. for different protests and stuff like that. So it won't surprise me.
Yeah.
And I think that's just, unfortunately, the name of the beast,
yeah.
where that's what it's going to be, is that it's almost going to seem like it's two rival nations, like signing a temporary peace treaty whenever it comes to the exchange of transfer of power and into the House.
Hey, it's the new normal. This is all the new normal, guys.
Man, as long as they're 6 feet apart with masks, we will be golden.
Two masks.
Two. Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, again, as always, a great conversation. I know we didn't get to a couple things, and we'll definitely make sure we hit them next week for sure, in the following week. Again, just a quick reminder for our listeners, if you guys do choose to listen live, we will be live February 15th on that Tuesday, 2022, unless something changes. So for our listeners that might listen to us on their morning drive in the morning on Tuesday, be prepared to have to listen on Wednesday. Again, a quick reminder, we are all now also on Twitch, Voice of Reason Podcast 2021. We are also on Twitch. So please make sure that next week, if you guys could just turn a phone on or your laptop or something, put us on in the corner. You can even set it to mute if you're not going to be listening at that time, just so that our view count on Twitch can go up. Please make sure you guys give us a like, share, and subscribe everywhere you guys do choose to follow us, whether it be here on Facebook, whether it's Spotify, even if you're going to listen tomorrow morning, or if you're listening to us on your drive right now, wherever it is that you are, please, whenever you complete this episode, click that share button, just copy the link, send a message to a couple of friends and just say, hey, you might like this or you might not like this. Please check these guys out. It'll help them out. So, because as we continue to do those things, and as our viewer count grows, and as our downloads grow, and our streamers grow, we will be able to do more with advertising. We'll be able to pull more, so we have more resources, so that we can create better content, bring clearer content, all kinds of good stuff for you guys. So that is the plan that we have for 2022, is to grow this brand, is to grow the podcast. And we want to grow the podcast just so that we can give you guys better content. Thankfully, all three of us have full-time jobs, so we're not having to make a living off this, but the income that we have from this can provide better, more quality, great content for you guys. So we definitely do appreciate every last one of you guys that do like, share, and listen. So again, you guys can find us on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, right now on Facebook Live, Twitch, and YouTube. Make sure to check out our Instagram and our Twitter page. Make sure you guys check for our new polls that we will be letting out throughout the rest of the week. And they are not the kind of polls that your mom worked at during college. These are the good kind.
There it is.
Hey, I've been saving it all night. So, gentlemen, before we sign off, is there anything that you guys would like to add?
No. Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys for listening. See you next
All
week.
right. We'll see you guys next week.